It's Friday. It means Michael Smerconish is here to discuss. He's CNN political commentator and, of course, the host of CNN Smerconish. Michael, good morning.
Good morning.
So that was a little walk down memory lane of what Donald Trump was like on the world stage last time around. This time, of course, it's honestly torqued. It's a more aggressive version even of that, based on, that head-spinning press conference that we saw around Gaza. It seems like pretty quickly they've had to walk back, though, specifically the idea that U.S. troops might be involved, which Trump refused to rule out during that press conference, despite having run during the campaign as someone who was going to get American troops out of the Middle East. What's your take on all of it?
I'm so glad that they walked it back. I heard a lot of conversation this week about the human rights issues of the Palestinians and the displacement of the Palestinians, valid concerns. I, however, look at this from a national security perspective of the United States. And I want to remind everybody, we were sold a bill of goods post September 11. We were told they hate us for our jeans. They hate us for our lattes. They hate us for our lap dances. None of that ended up being true. They hate us for their perception of our interventionist foreign policy. And that was a lesson that candidate Donald Trump seemed to grasp, and campaigning on keeping us out of forever wars made sense to me as a result. But even raising the prospect that we will play some direct role in Gaza sounds reminiscent of Iraq and Afghanistan and all the mistakes of the last 20 years. So I thought it was just a terrible error in judgment. I don't know where it came from. I'm glad that he's walking it back.
Yeah. Michael, let's talk about some of the other things that we have seen unfolding rapid fire across the government. Today, for example, we're reporting that the Trump administration is going to fire basically 10,000 people from USAID and tell them that they need to come home from the stations where they are across the world, leaving about 300 people left at the agency. That's just one example of many. And of course, Democrats are trying to figure out, how do we push back against things that we are opposed to in this way when it is all happening so fast? What do you think the opposition party should be focusing on right now if they want to be successful?
I think USAID is a losing issue for Democrats. I get the argument for the exertion of soft power internationally. I think it makes sense for the United States, for all the reasons I was just referring to relative to Gaza, to make friends but not do so with boots on the ground. But there's always going to be an instance, an example, where someone can point to an expenditure, and to the American people, it's going to be like, my God, why are we spending, fill in the blank? And I won't even use condoms. I'll say 20 million on Sesame Street in Iraq. And Kasie, a little bit before your time and a wee bit before my time, but William Proxmire. William Proxmire was the senator from Wisconsin. I think he was the longest serving senator from Wisconsin. His career was largely predicated on the announcement of the Golden Fleece Award, which was always some ridiculous expenditure of federal funds that would be head scratching, and people would say, well, thank goodness Senator Proxmire is out there exposing all of this waste, fraud, and abuse. It's a winning issue for Republicans, I say.
Michael, what do you make of the argument? And this is something I actually focused on a lot as I was in school during the Iraq War. That was kind of unfolding as my political consciousness was being formed. The idea that the way that we communicate with people overseas, America's image abroad, it's kind of the idea, being able to try to talk to people about the idea of America being something to aspire to, and that being an important piece of, the USAID is a piece of Cold War infrastructure. It is not neutral in terms of our national security. And you have the Chinese focused on this Belt and Road Initiative, where they are spending millions, putting all these countries across the world in their debt and being a partner to them across the world. Do you think that there's a national security argument that Democrats who are defending USAID could make, or not?
I think that there is. I think that we've been our own worst enemies. I'm going to sound like Ron Paul now, but our response so often has been that wherever there's a hot spot, we open a base. I remember that I was a guest of the Pentagon in the Rumsfeld era to travel to the Middle East 15,000 miles in the span of less than 10 days. And one of the stops on the road was Djibouti in the Horn of Africa. And I'm like, well, why are you taking me to Djibouti? Why do we have a base in Djibouti? And the answer was, well, because Al-Qaeda is now in Djibouti. Right? Like everywhere we thought they were, we would go. We didn't make friends in that process. And by the way, Kasie, I had skin in this game. I was one of those behind a microphone like this parroting the line, we need to fight them over there. I think it was Zell Miller. We need to fight them over there, or we'll be fighting them here. No, every time we went over there, we raised the odds that they were going to hate us more. That was the lesson I took away. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I've been reflecting on the last 30 years, and that's what I think.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, Michael Smerconish, always enjoy having your perspective on the show, sir. Thank you so much for being here. See you next week.
Thank you.
Do tune in to Smerconish. It's tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on CNN.